Hello, grade 2 teachers. In this video, we're going to have a look at the computer science organizing idea from your new science curriculum and some ways that you can teach it to your students, both explicitly as well as embedding it into your other lessons and your daily classroom routines. Let's start out by talking about some of the reasons why teaching computer science is really important for your students. They are growing up into a world where technology is really advanced and it's touching almost everything. Right now, there is already a shortage of programmers in the work field, and we know that this is likely just going to continue to grow unless we can encourage more youth to choose careers in computer programming. Not only having a career in computer programming, really, no matter what a child today wants to be when they grow up, having some skills in computer programming is going to help them get a job in other careers as well, because we know that machines and robotics and the computer sciences is involved in every different field that there is out there now. And really, your grade 2 students, by the time they are entering the workforce, we really can't envision what that world is going to look like for them. But we know for sure that these technology skills are going to help them in whatever that world looks like. In this video, we're going to see a couple of things. An inspirational story about a young man named Timothy Sweeney. You're also going to experience the Canva artificial intelligence presenter. I myself was pretty blown away at how advanced this type of technology has gotten. I was able to just put some text into the app, and this lady was created and read my story out loud for me, which I was, as I say, pretty blown away with. And it's really a sign of how quickly things are advancing. If we can create a virtual talking head just simply by pasting text in, and it's starting to have some pretty human-like characteristics and features, the way that the mouth moves to speak the words, that kind of fine thing has really advanced. So this is just a cool demonstration of that, as well as a great story that I hope will inspire you, but also that you can use to inspire your students, because they will definitely connect with this one and see why they might want to be like this young man. So I'm just going to let this AI lady take it away for a moment and hide myself away.
Once upon a time, there was an 11-year-old boy named Timothy Sweeney who loved to play video games. He was born in 1970 and grew up in Potomac, Maryland with his parents and two older brothers. When he was 11 years old, his brother gave him his first computer. It was an Apple II Plus, and Sweeney used it to program computer games. He said, "I think I spent more time programming than I think I was sleeping or in school or doing anything else in the world." When he wasn't programming, Tim would play video games to learn how they worked. He took apart lawnmowers, TVs, and radios to learn how they worked too. While Tim was going to college studying to become a computer engineer, he made his first computer game in his spare time called ZZT. In 1998, Tim's company, under its new name Epic Games, released Unreal, the first computer game ever that allowed players to play together on different computers. Along with the game came the release of the Unreal Engine, a platform for building 3D graphic games with multiplayer capabilities. This made it possible for anyone, anywhere to build these kinds of games for free. There have been 5 versions and hundreds of games have been built on it, including the highest profit game of all time, Fortnite. Across all platforms, Fortnite made over $9 billion in its first 2 years. In 2020, Epic Games reported that there were more than 350 million Fortnite user accounts created. Love it or hate it, you know it. From an 11-year-old kid with a dream to one of the richest people in the world. What will your dream be?
And what will your students' dream be? That is the question. So you can share this video. It's made available in our resources if you would like to inspire students to be like young Tim Sweeney and grow up and change the world, or just use it as inspiration for yourself at how a little devotion and determination and imagination and creativity and some of the things that you're going to see in your computer science curriculum created this young man who is a world famous computer programmer and businessman. You are probably already familiar with the organizational structure of the new curriculum, and the science is the same as the math and the ELA that you've already rolled out. We have the organizing ideas at the top that go throughout the grades. Some are inclusive of kindergarten through six, and some start off at different levels. Computer science is one of the ones that goes all the way from kindergarten through grade six and has that same organizing idea for all of those grades. And we are talking about the organizing idea of problem solving and scientific inquiry are developed through the knowledgeable application of creativity, design, and computational thinking. So there, you can see in the bolded words are sort of the key points that I've picked out of this organizing idea. So all the way from kindergarten through grade six, computer sciences is about problem solving skills as well as the scientific inquiry. And then those three key ideas of creativity, design thinking, and computational thinking are common threads that will start very thin in kindergarten but do weave their way all the way up through to grade six, where by grade six, students are expected to apply creativity and design thinking and computational thinking to actually design and create computational artifacts. Our learning outcomes then underneath that organizing idea, this is where we see the difference between the different grades and how those those learning outcomes start at the kindergarten level and then build upon each other up towards grade six. And of course, as a grade two teacher, you do need to be concerned in particularly in the first couple of years that you're doing this with filling some gaps potentially that your students have from not having had the previous curriculum. So you're fortunate at the grade two level that the kindergarten and the grade one learning outcomes are talking about children understanding instructions. And fortunately, working within instructions and understanding them and interpreting them, as the kindergarten outcome states, is something that can be easily covered through just general classroom routines. Some of the first things that kindergarten students would be taught on the first day of school would be about following instructions that the teacher has given them to build those, classroom routines within the day. So even if your students haven't been explicitly taught any computer science, just referencing instructions and routines that we follow in classes is going to cover off that kindergarten outcome for you. It's really going to cover off the grade one gap for you as well, because we just see a slight shift up into that students are now investigating instructions as well as their influence on actions and outcomes. So we could be seeing some cause and effect typed relationships when we're looking at how the instructions are influencing actions. So again, something that you can fairly easily fill those gaps just by making connections to things that the students really already know. They just may not have been framed in specifically this way. And then as you're moving into your learning outcome for grade two, now we see creativity pop up, which was one of those key terms from the organizing idea all the way up through the grades. So in grade two, now we're introducing the idea of creativity and what that means as it pertains to science. And there's in your curriculum documents, there is in the understandings piece and the knowledge piece, there's a lot of information about what creativity means as it pertains to science, and how that is, generating something new, coming up with a new idea or a new thing. So we'll see that when we look a little closer at your curriculum. And then how creativity is connected to designing instructions to create, a desired outcome. So that's your grade 2 learning outcome. And all of the cusps, all of the knowledge and the understandings and the skills and procedures that fall inside the meat of what you're actually going to do with your students all comes back to meeting this learning outcome. This is the one that you need to, be sure that is being taught and make sure is being assessed. And there are lots of ways that you can do this, both explicitly and implicitly. So we'll definitely have a look at a few of those. And then just, looking beyond at where your students would be going as they move into grade 3. Now we're still see creativity coming up as a part of the learning outcome, and in this case we're starting to connect it into computational thinking. So there's that second key idea out of the organizing idea is now coming up in grade 3. So any things that we can do to help build this progression is going to really solidify those key concepts: creativity, computational thinking, and also design thinking for your students. So the first big piece, design thinking, is not something that you are expected to explicitly teach in grade 3, but given the complicated nature of design thinking process and what this whole model is, and that knowing that they are expected to understand this process and be able to apply it to something as they move up towards grade 6. I believe it's in grade 5 that they're explicitly asked about this. It could be grade 4 as well that it's coming up. Either way, it's really good to start working on some of these skills. So while you won't teach grade 2 students about the design thinking process, you probably could start teaching them about maybe empathy. And we might not think of empathy as coming into play necessarily in science, but it's heavily comes into play. So you have opportunity to learn about empathy as it pertains to science, as well as how it pertains to maybe, just our personal well-being or our daily interactions with others or other applications that we would have for that. We do brainstorming with our students across the subject areas for a variety of purposes. Again, just drawing attention to that is the activity that you're doing when we are all coming up with ideas. This is called brainstorming. Brainstorming helps people come up with creative ideas because it lets you see a lot of different things and it lets you share ideas with each other. Collaboration is another big piece that comes up throughout the computer sciences curriculum, working with others. So doing a brainstorming and drawing attention to how, brainstorming with multiple people is much more effective, and we're probably going to come up with a much more creative idea or end product because we started with brainstorming, just drawing attention to those processes, talking about what we're doing. You're going to be building those building blocks to give students the skills that they need to put the design thinking process together when they get there. So there's lots of opportunities to sort of individualize these pieces of the design thinking process for your grade 2 students, not teach them to the students, but use the language, talk about what is happening when you're doing things like empathizing. We'll look a little bit more deeply at how you can teach your students about the empathizing piece of the design thinking, because I think it's a really important piece. Definitely one of the first things needed to understand before one can do design thinking, and also just a really good life skill that we can help our students learn to, walk in someone else's shoes. There's a lot of really good reasons to be good at doing that. I'm just at pause. So here is an example of a series of slides that I've used with some older students and younger students to work through what the design process means. We would probably be doing this and connected to a project where they'd be asked to actually use the design process and work through these steps. And so In this section of slides, there just are some examples of videos that can be used with students to help them understand the different parts of design thinking and how they are used. So we have, of course, the empathize and define. I've got something for each. The ideate one doesn't have a video. I found brainstorming was something students definitely understood. In STEM brainstorming and in any kind of brainstorming where we're trying to get creative, we have the no bad ideas rule and quantity over quality, like get as many ideas as possible. What's a storm? We need the biggest storm possible. And again, just using that language with your students, and so that when their grade 4 teacher says, here's the design process, and is working through them, be like, oh, we know what brainstorming is because we've been doing lots of that all the way along the way. And you're doing it, just referencing it, and then you're touching on that CS also. And we can talk to students about prototyping and moving through that testing process. I like to use the Wright brothers and have a conversation. What do you think would have happened if they hadn't tried again? When their first plane didn't fly, what might have happened? And, we might not be able to fly around the world today. Who knows what might have happened if they had given up, and start having those conversations about how failure is okay. This is the other piece of design thinking that I think the earlier on we can start teaching students about this, the better. It is really hard for students to learn how to fail. Or I should say most students. It's hard to learn how to fail, and to learn how to fail and go back and try again. Find the mistake that was made, debug the error, figure it out, and keep doing that until you achieve the end result that you want. So there's just some little ways that you could share design thinking with your students, get knowledgeable a little bit yourself, and to understand how you can teach your students about design thinking without teaching them the design thinking process. And again, it's going to connect in the later grades, and some of the cusps that you have definitely connect back to this design thinking idea as well. So this is an empathizing activity that I've done a ton of times with grade 5 and 6 students. I think it would be effective with students of most any age, depending of course on age level. We might adjust how complicated the assignment is going to be. So I would start off by telling students that we're going to be designing something for someone to wear. And I'm not going to give any conditions beyond that. We're designing something for someone to wear, and we're going to watch a video of the person that we're designing this thing for. So when you watch the video, you are going to start thinking about what this person needs. I also want you to be prepared to talk about how the video made you feel. And as you're learning about and meeting Mandy, that this is our audience, this is who we're going to be designing something for. As you're learning about her, I want you to think about how you would feel if you were in Mandy's position, and what kind of person you think Mandy seems to be like, and then also what qualities does the video show you about Mandy? What qualities do you see in her? And we're going to watch the video, and then we're going to have a bit of a group discussion and some brainstorming, and then I'm going to ask you guys to design an idea for a prototype for something for her. So again, keep these things in mind while you watch, and let's meet Mandy.
Okay, Mandy, so I think I've worked this out. So you're deaf?
Yes, I lost all my hearing when I was 18 years old.
Wow. And how old are you now?
29. So it's 10 years.
Wow. And Mandy, how did you lose your hearing, if you don't mind me asking?
I have a connective tissue disorder, so basically I got sick and my nerves deteriorated. Growing up, the only thing I wanted to do was sing. I ended up going to school for vocal music education so that I could have that be my life. When I was in college, I thought I had an ear infection, and it just got worse and worse. And by Christmas, I was borderline legally deaf in both ears. There was one day where the teacher was going to play the piano, and I had to chart out everything that he was playing. And I had my pencil ready, and everybody else's pencils start moving, and I'm just waiting for the test to start. And then one by one, every person just got up and left the room. And I didn't hear enough to even start the test. That was the last day I was a part of music program. That was a bad day.
When we're sitting in the car together to come home, she said, "Dad, I can't remember what your voice sounds like anymore." At that moment, you knew that things would never be the same.
Everything that I had ever wanted was just going away, and I couldn't stop it.
The music is alive inside of her. The only question was, what could she do with it now?
My dad suggested that we play a song. I said, well, that's crazy, but I had a guitar tuner, and I hummed my starting note and just went for it. Music now isn't about the sound, it's about the feeling. I'm excited, I'm nervous, I'm scared, so I'm just trying to... It's not the dream that I always had. That's okay, because I showed up, and I did something I never believed I could do.
So, you were singing before you lost your hearing?
Yeah, I've been singing since I was 4. So I left music after I lost my hearing, and then figured out how to get back into singing with muscle memory, using visual tuners, and trusting my pitch.
So your shoes are off because you're feeling the vibration. Is that how you're following the music?
Yeah, I'm feeling the tempo, the beat through the floor.
And Mandy, what are you going to sing?
I'm gonna sing a song that I wrote called Try.
Okay, can you tell me what it's about?
After I lost my hearing, I gave up, but I want to do more with my life than just give up. So.
Good for you. Good for you. Okay, well, look, this is your moment, and good luck.
Okay.
Mandy, I don't think you're going to need a translator for this.
And this is the part where I would tell the students that I have empathy running down my face. So show this video to the students. You can pause at points. It's effective to stop and talk about what do we think. How would you feel if you were in Mandy's position? You could talk about, when they zoom in on those audience members and how they're being impacted, and that is what empathy is. When you are feeling sad for Mandy at the beginning of the video because of what's happened to her, and then how do you feel when Simon hits the golden buzzer? You're excited for her. That's what empathy is. When you can imagine what it feels like to be somebody else, you're doing empathy. And I talk to the students also about how, some of us have to try a little bit harder to put ourselves in someone else's shoes. And for some of us, it's more of a natural thing. But we can all learn how to think what it would be like to be in someone else's shoes. How would we feel? So this is a fun way that I've had really good success in sharing about empathy with students. And then we would move on to now the activity. So now I would have a discussion with the students about what is Mandy's problem. And we would talk about it's not about being deaf. That's not a problem. That is an impairment that cannot be fixed. And Mandy has actually solved that problem by figuring out to sing even though she cannot hear. And then I'm probably, especially at the grade 2 level, need to guide the students into, well, how is she dealing with her problem? And we come to the determination that she sings in her stocking feet so she can feel the vibrations. So now that we've reached this point, we are going to get to, well, she has to sing in her socks. She can't wear shoes. And how would you feel about that? And if you were up on stage, she's probably going to be famous now. Simon hit the golden buzzer. Do you think she should have to go up on stage in front of lots of people and not be able to wear shoes? And then this would be where we'd now move into, can you dream up an invention for Mandy? How could you help Mandy? When I've done this with grade 5s and grade 6s, I've seen an incredible amount of really amazing ideas. And everything from something very simple and no tech, like a pair of shoes with the soles cut out of the bottom so that she can still sense the vibrations on the floor, to some really advanced technological ideas that are probably not even possible today. But that's the whole reason for doing all of this with these students, is that we want them to dream big and grow up and change the world with what they invent or do. Our next big piece is computational thinking. We see this popping up specifically a little bit later in the curriculum, but again, even in grade 2, your organizing idea includes this as a part of it, which means anytime you can teach the students the skills that are a part of computational thinking, you're going to be helping them out in their later grades and giving them really necessary skills, not only for their science learning, but for their learning in all of their subjects and just life in general. Understanding how computers work, being able to do computational thinking, valuable skills for your students. So we're going to look at computational thinking by breaking it down into these aspects. You may see other models of computational thinking that have slightly different aspects outlined, but these are the ones that we're going to be looking at for the different steps that you would go through, or the different parts of computational thinking. These connect to skills that you're going to give your students that really are just about problem solving and breaking problems down and figuring out how to solve them. So let's have a look at each of these a little bit closer. We're going to talk about decomposition in regards right now. Well, we're going to do all of computational thinking talking about a pizza. A pizza is something that everybody can connect with, and we can really quickly start to talk about, well, what's all in this pizza? Let's decompose this and break it down into all of its parts. So just taking something really familiar and simple structure to start thinking about what breaking a problem down is. So how can we decompose this, and what are all of the different parts of this thing, and what are the attributes or the properties of these things? And then as we move into pattern recognition, so now that I've broken this down into its parts, what can we see about these that are the same, and what can we see that's different? And can we find something? Can we find some type of rules that we could possibly sort these by? Or is there a way that we can, group them up? So as I have in the example here, we can look, well, these ingredients would need to be sliced, and this stuff doesn't need to be sliced. It needs something different done to it. So now I've got, two different groupings. We've recognized some patterns in our parts of the pizza. Now, if we move to pattern abstraction, okay, so a pizza is made up of a whole bunch of different parts. And some of those parts we have to slice up before we can put them on the pizza, and some of them we don't slice up before we put on the pizza. Can you think of other things that we need to slice before we use or maybe eat them? And you think of things that aren't sliced. And we might come up mostly with food things, particularly at a young age like grade 2. They're going to, make the closest connections. And there's lots of things that we slice and don't slice as far as food goes. But we could even expand to, well, do we also slice or cut wood? Is slicing the same as cutting? I don't know. We cut grass as well. Is that slicing? Talking about, just applying that pattern we've created to other things, and we're doing some abstraction. And this point, we don't care about any of the other properties of these items. We've broken it all down, and we're honed in on that one property, which in this case is, can it be sliced up and can it not? We can further abstract by thinking about what are some other things that we could do this with. Can you think of another food that we could, break down into these parts and maybe get into this slice and no slice category? And again, we ask the students to generate. So now we're taking these patterns that we've discovered. We're thinking about particular properties and thinking of things and pulling them into this group that we've predefined. So that is all computational thinking with food. And you could use this with your students and actually teach them these steps, or just be cognizant of when you're doing various things, when you're sorting anything into groups, you're looking at particular attributes of those things, you're defining patterns of those things, you're actually using computational thinking skills, and your students are building those as they use them too. And then the last piece is that algorithm design. So in our pizza example, if we've gone through decomposing the pizza, we've broke it down, because that's, if we're going to figure out, and this was our end goal, if we're going to figure out how to tell someone to make a pizza, what if I want to tell somebody who has no idea what a pizza is how to make it? Or what if I want to tell a machine how to make a pizza? Can we come up with a set of instructions? So, we're going to have to break things down. This is where we've worked through this. We have to figure out what's in that pizza. We have to figure out if there's extra steps in this preparation so that we know when we get to this last stage, algorithm design, that we're going to put together an effective set of instructions for building that pizza. And so this is a pretty simple algorithm for building a pizza, mostly so it would just fit on the slide. I think with your class, especially as if you were working as a group, having them collaborating in groups, collaboration comes up throughout the computer sciences curriculum. We know collaborating, particularly when we get into, computer programming, working with someone else, two brains are more powerful than one and all of that. So building this algorithm as a class or in groups, it would be fun to have them work in small groups and compare with each other. Well, what do you think? Do you think this result will produce a pizza? Well, yes, it will. Will your result produce a pizza? Well, look at that. You have slightly different instructions, and it might also create the same thing at the end. And, did we do a good job of breaking them down? You can ask students to include just some coding language without even referring to it being that. We can bring in something like an if-then statement. If it is a fruit or vegetable, then wash it. If it is in a package, then open it. So just a slightly different way of wording the instructions is like naturally sort of bringing in that coding language that they're going to be expected to know explicitly as they move up through the computer sciences. Creative thinking, as I say, we're going to look pretty closely at this as we start to look closer at your curriculum, because creative thinking and creativity is a piece of grade 2 that pops up specifically in your learning outcome, and we're wanting students to think about finding new ways to solve something, looking for a new path to the same place, coming up with something new out of something old, and these types of ideas. Creativity, as I say, finding different ways to reach the same outcome, problem solving to overcome obstacles to achieve a desired outcome. Just thinking of things in new ways is the simplest way to think of creativity. The design thinking and the computational thinking and the creative thinking all tie in to be parts, in my mind, of a scientist. A colleague shared this really cute graphic with me that she had on paper, and I did a digital version because I really liked the way that it laid out the pieces of being a scientist, and lots of the things that I've talked about regarding computational thinking, design thinking are encompassed in these parts of a scientist too. So this is something you can take out of the slides and freely use with your students to learn about being a scientist. It would apply not only to your computer sciences, but for sure to your other science topics as well. And there are just a few different versions here that you can choose from to use if you like. As we get ready to jump into looking at the skills and procedures most specifically that are in your curriculum, is what I'm going to show you how you can specifically teach each of those. I want to just touch on this piece is my KidBots piece. So you saw that a lot that the outcomes in kindergarten and grade 1 had to do with instructions, and I talked about how they learn to follow instructions from the second that they walk in the kindergarten teacher's door. Their days are all about routines and following different sets of instructions. So having a conversation with your students about how machines and computers follow instructions in the same way that humans do. You know how I have given you guys a set of instructions for what you're supposed to do when you come in the mornings. That is just the same as how you can give a set of instructions to a machine or a robot to make it do what you want it to do. You guys are like my little robots, and I have programmed you with a whole bunch of algorithms this year. And I'm going to be programming you with more algorithms as we go throughout the year. You are my little robots, and you're going to learn all kinds of algorithms. We're going to learn algorithms for our learning and things that we're doing in class. And as I say, you can even connect this to things, outside. Do you have a routine at home for this? Are you a robot? Your parents give you algorithms? What about, do you have a pet? Does your pet know any tricks? Well, look at that. Your pet might know an algorithm too. So making general references to just how instruction following is what we are doing as instruction following is the same as what a computer is doing as instruction following is going to give your students really good foundational understanding of what that computer programming and computational thinking is. And as we move into now the actual curriculum and start to look at these cusps, as I mentioned, creativity is a big piece of your curriculum. We see creativity popping up, and we see if the word instructions coming up all over the place. And then here they've given you, some good definitions of what creativity can be and what it means. And I mentioned we see collaboration coming up here too. So anytime we can get them working together on these things and solving things out together, we're going to be, doing that collaboration, which is a really good piece of it. Lots around instructions being precise and reliable. And you can see we have quite a number of skills and procedures here that we're going to go through in detail and look at some ways that you can work with these with students and have them demonstrate that they're catching on to this understanding. They're able to work with the instructions. They're doing predicting and refining and even looking at debugging their sets of instructions. So lots of information here for you to help inform the activities and the conversations that you're having with your students as they're working through and learning these different skills and procedures, and really getting in touch with computational thinking, design thinking, and using their creative thinking skills as well. So you in grade 2 have a heavy set of knowledge, quite a number of skills and procedures compared to some of the other grades in computer science, but it's still not anything that you need to be intimidated about. You're going to find that some of the things that you're already doing can easily be connected to this, and the things that you need to teach implicitly that you're not already doing are pretty straightforward and can be really fun to teach too. So the first skill and procedure that we'll look at is the identify ways creativity is used to design instructions. We can talk to students about, where are all the different places in our lives that we see and use and need instructions, and generate ideas for, we use board games, and when we give you instructions at school, and when you follow recipes, and when you buy furniture at IKEA, and all kinds of places. I'm sure your students can think of many, many ways, places that instructions are needed. And we could have a conversation about, are there different ways that you can get instructions? Well, some of them are written, and we might see symbols like arrows, and we could use hand signals, and someone could give us instructions out loud, and then also maybe we type instructions into a computer like we do with a machine. Computers can be given instructions by typing into them and telling them what to do, just like how humans can be. So having just those conversations about what instructions are, and then making the connections between what we use as instructions and how that connects to what we give to computers or robots as instructions, gonna check off that skill and procedure in a great way. You can also have students do something like an activity where we're now giving them a grid. Grids are a great way to teach basic coding skills. We're going to be putting steps in order. So I want to make this butterfly fly to all the flowers. I can give the students this digitally and ask them to copy and paste arrows. We could have this as a printed activity on paper where we're drawing the arrows. I could have the arrows on cards. We could be using something like checkerboards with physical pieces on it. It doesn't matter what the grid is or what the objects are. The whole thing is just about taking those pieces, those arrows, the steps, and lining up an algorithm and then seeing if that's going to meet the end goal for where we want, in this case, this butterfly to go. And we could then, once we've asked students, to sort out an algorithm, we can start now to compare off with friends and have discussions about, oh, well, what made you do that? Or why did you do it that way? And have the students explain how they used creativity to figure out how they were going to get their butterfly around. You could add some conditions. There could be some hazards on here that the butterfly has to avoid. And you could add those in and then ask students, how does that change the algorithm that you've built? Do you need to make adjustments? And you're asking them now, to be creative. You have to find a new way to the path. Your path has been blocked. We have a whole pile of skills and procedures I'm going to pull up all at once. So these fall into that one knowledge and understanding piece, and all have to do with more advanced levels of building algorithms and putting sets of instructions together. So we'll have a look at these sort of in groups. Again, we see the in groups being specifically pulled up here in the procedure. I would be inclined to say to work individually and in groups, because the more we do it, the better we're going to cement that skill in and help the students with their computer science in the future and give them opportunities to learn and work with it in different ways. So working individually or in groups, we're going to create instructions using precise words, pictures, or diagrams. And then the next one about creating 3 to 4 step instructions. So with the same example that I had on the last slide, we could ask students, how many different ways can you find for your butterfly to visit all 3 flowers and go home to its leaf? And challenge them to use the arrows and figure out as many different pathways as they can. Definitely going to be meeting these skills and procedures here. With that, we can also give them something where we've predetermined. So this would be giving them the algorithm ahead of time and asking them to figure out if these instructions, if the butterfly is going to get to where it needs to be. And we're asking students to predict. So likely we are going to prevent them in some way from just simply accurately counting this out. We want to have them, we want to do that discussion, have a quick glance at this and look, maybe cover up the butterfly image after you've let them have a quick peek and say, what do you think? Do you think this algorithm's going to get the butterfly there? Does it make sense? And then, pull up the picture, have a look, looking at the picture and looking at the algorithm. Do you think it's going to make the butterfly visit all 3 flowers and then go to its leaf? And we can determine that. So that's just a simple way with one simple example. If you have tiles on the floor in your classroom, things like this can be done easily just with our bodies moving around the room. If you have types of toys that can be slid around on the tile floors, one square at a time, with hand signals instead of arrows, or however you choose to do it, just simple sets of instructions with arrows like this on a grid moving things around, and you're going to hit these skills and procedures easily. Now we're going to look at refining instructions to more efficiently achieve a desired outcome. So again, they're not talking about coding concepts specifically here in your curriculum, but this is definitely alluding to and building towards working with things like loops. So here is just a simple example of, again, if we've worked through some type of activity where we're working with these arrows and we're starting to see that we're doing, is there a way that we could be more efficient with these 3 arrows? Well, yeah, could we just say do that 3 times? And then, we can compare off. Look at this. This is 10 steps, and this is now only 5 different instructions. So we've cut it in half just by being more efficient in our instructions. And we can do this with these arrows. We can do this with other things too. It could be something, if we go back to the pizza algorithm, is there any way that you could be more efficient in the instructions? Say we've listed out each ingredient, put the pepperoni on, can we is there a way that we can make this more efficient? Can we say to repeat something or refine this in some way? So not just with so coding specific instructions, like these arrows are definitely more coding. Anytime we're talking about instructions, we could talk about, do you think there could be a way that we could do that better, faster, with less materials, whatever the case may be? Just simplifying instructions and getting them to think about making it down to the smallest, the most efficient. Giving them instructions and asking them again, so just like a couple of slides ago where we're giving the algorithm and asking students to determine or verify if the algorithm meets the objective. So again, will the butterfly get to all 3 flowers and end at the leaf? With these instructions, have them test it out, make sure that it works. That would be a simple way of saying, yes, we've met this skill. And of course, again, this is just one simple way. There's many ways just by connecting to instructions. It doesn't have to be computer or coding related. It certainly can be, and that's one way that we can be teaching it. But by connecting it into any other areas where it connects nicely into sets of instructions that we're doing, even just explaining, I'm going to do this math equation. If I do this and this and this, am I going to get the right answer? That would be covering whatever math concept you're doing, as well as covering this testing of instructions. And I think making connections outside of your computer science specific topic within your science is just really going to make these skills much more apparent for your students and help them learn them much more easily. And we also, again, same line would be to give them this, does it work? And then can you find the mistakes and make it so it works? And now we have moved into that debugging. It uses the term debug here. This is definitely a place where I would use this language with students and say debugged. Well, what do you think debug means? Well, did you know that when computer programs have a problem, that's called a bug? And getting the bugs out is debugging. So when you are getting the mistakes out, and you could use this language, oh, you've got 2 bugs on your math assignment. Can you go debug that and bring it back to me? Just bringing that language in everywhere is going to help your students learn it. So on all those same skills and procedures, just some other examples and ways that you can connect in. I mentioned a bit about math. Here's a math example where you could ask your students, so they have been expected to count by 2s. And so ask them, can you create a set of instructions for counting by 2s? You know how to count by 2s. How would you tell someone who doesn't know how to count by 2s to do that? And then we could, we're going to work out that instruction. And then is there a way that we could use a repeat, or can we trim that down and make it easier so that someone could count on forever? And then, trade with a friend. Let's collaborate together and compare our instructions and work together to refine them and see if there's any errors. And then I have an example here. We could, give them a sample that definitely has a mistake in it. Max was skip counting by 2s. Where's his mistake? Ask them to debug and find that error. So we can be working with those math concepts and then bringing, this computer science skills and procedures in as well, and then covering off that computer science outcome while you're also covering math. Also connecting to your daily routines, I've mentioned more than once. Same thing when you ask students to give back the instructions. Perhaps you tell them, here's the thing. When the fire bell goes, what does that mean? It means there's danger. There's a fire in the building. Oh my gosh. I don't know what we need to do if the fire bell goes off. Can you guys help me come up with a set of instructions? And then, work through that process with your students. You're going to do fire safety, and you're also going to hit a whole bunch of these skills and procedures. In particular, we're going to bring it up one more level and add in that coding language and, a conditional statement. Like, if I have a question, then I put my hand up. That is a classroom algorithm. That's an algorithm, a program I've taught you, my kid bot. You know that if you have a question, then you put your hand up. But you don't put your hand up if you don't have a question. There's no need to put your hand up then. So that's a computer language. We can write algorithms for when the recess bell goes, or what we need to do before we eat our food, or how you wash your hands. Well, there's lots of ways that you can cover these skills and procedures. Just have students working with the classroom routine instructions that you're doing, and they'll make connections into these computer science outcomes or skills and procedures at the same time. Another skill is to describe a situation in which repetition simplifies instructions. I could find quick, very easy ways to tie this specifically into computer coding. At grade 2, you're probably not doing a whole ton of computer coding, though if you are, definitely loops and repetition comes in early on in whether you're doing block-based programming or if you're using some type of little robots or something. But again, we can make these connections to how this repetition isn't just about computers. Let's find repetition in real life. What are things that you do where the instructions can be simplified by using, a loop, because that's the repeating. And like when we make pancakes, you go through all these steps, but then when you get to the part where you pour the batter and you flip it and then you take it off and you pour the batter and we can put a repeat in there. We don't need to write that out 20 times. When I'm telling someone how to paint, I don't need to write roll the roller up, roll the roller down, roll the roller up, roll the roller down. How can I simplify that with a loop and washing a dish, planting a garden, going upstairs, anywhere we can think that we need to repeat. We did the pizza earlier. A lasagna reference lends itself really nicely because again, we go through these steps and then at the end, do this and then do it again and then do it again. So just students aren't being asked to do anything more than to describe a situation, have a conversation about this, and then, challenge students to go out and think of some other place where there's instructions that need to be repeated. They might connect it to gaming or something from their personal lives. It could be sports instructions. There's lots of ways for them to connect with this, practice this skill and procedure, both implicitly again and in their other learning, daily lives, anywhere that there are instructions. And finally, we have exchange ideas to design clear 3 to 4 step instructions, including repetition to achieve a desired outcome. I've pulled up my butterfly example again. I think I've explained a few examples of ways to work these 3 to 4 step instructions in. So this really just has to do with having, students working together and trading ideas back and forth. So an activity asking them, again, to design a path for this butterfly. Everybody, lay out your arrows, write an algorithm for the butterfly to visit the 3 flowers and then its leaf. Now get together with a partner and compare your 2 algorithms and how are they the same? How are they different? Does one of you have more steps than the other? Do you think, there's a way that you can make this smaller now? And ask the students, now I'm going to challenge you to work with your partner to find the path to meet all 3 flowers and the leaf in the fewest steps. And now I'm asking students to work together to design these instructions that include repetition. And again, if you are doing classroom instructions and there's an opportunity for you to, open this out to, is there a way we could make this more refined? Can we have a repeat in these instructions? Or when we're doing something in gym and we're going to dribble a basketball. How do you dribble a basketball? You bounce to the floor and you repeat. How many times do you repeat? Forever, right? So you can connect this stuff into anything that you're doing. And every time you make a connection, you're really just going to embed that learning even further for your students with these skills and topics. And they're all going to build into their upper grades and that ultimate goal of encouraging our students to consider careers in computer programming, software engineering, design, or to at least try and hone, to get those skills to help them in the careers that they do choose to go into. Our last piece is specifically going to be about coding. So this is an activity that you can do with your students to give them the intro basics to coding. This is exactly the lesson, the slides, and how I deliver this from kindergarten up through grade 6. Of course, I simplify a little with the kindergarten kids, don't talk as much, do a little more talking with the older guys, but at the end of the day, it's all the same message. We start by having students understand that coding consists of many languages, so many languages that computers understand, and that humans write those languages, and by putting those languages into computers, we are able to make them do what we want them to do. We know we can get the kids excited by talking about all the things that have coding in them. Almost everything that we use nowadays has some type of technology, and there's probably a little bit of software programming in there. And if you know how to program software, you know how to make all of these things do exactly what you want. And of course, the world of robots is ever advancing. I like to have conversations with kids about what they think robots are. They often lean towards the more fictional ones that they've seen on movies or in cartoons, and then I like to show them all of these guys and talk about how, these robots all have jobs. Like, one of them's a police robot, and one can defuse bombs, and one milks cows, and one cleans up oil spills off the ocean, and one of them even does surgery. And how, smart people who learned to computer program, wrote the languages that these robots understand, and they gave these robots the instructions to do really important jobs. And that's what you can learn to do by computer programming. You could grow up and write an amazing game like Tim Sweeney, or you could create a robot that's going to change the world and teach it to do things that are going to change the world. So we can get them excited about robots and see how big and complicated and cool robots are, and then we can break it down into what coding really is. We might think of coding as something like this scene from A Beautiful Mind, but it's really not that. It's very simple. You know this already. Coding is just a set of instructions for a machine or a computer. That's what it is. This is our vocabulary that we would use as students. So I'd start talking to them right away about, so an algorithm, that just means a set of instructions. And we talk about how a recipe is an algorithm, and, all of the algorithms that I've taught you, my little robots. And we talked about loops earlier. We know what a loop is. That's a repeating. And then event, input, output. So the event, that's what starts the algorithm. So we're going to do an activity where you're going to be my robots. I'm going to give you a language, and an event that's going to start the algorithm. The input, that's the algorithm. That's the instructions that I give you. And the output, that's what you are going to do when you get the instructions. And that is really what you need to know about programming a computer or a robot or anything, is just these basic things are going to come into play. And now we can talk about how coding really is, as we say, just following a set of instructions like brushing your teeth. We could ask students to come up with this set of instructions. We could give them these cards and ask them to put them in order. Whatever the case may be, we're teaching them what algorithm design is, putting steps, instructions in order in connection with something that they're super familiar with. Then this little activity, so I work through this. I've done this in person. I've done this virtually with classes. I've done this with little kids, and I've even done it with adults. It's fun with adults too. Feel free to play along as you watch if you like as well. So we'll start off by introducing the language. So I would go through this much more slowly with my students and talk about, when you see the R, you're going to stomp your right foot, and when you see the L, you're going to stomp your left foot. And when you see an H, you're going to clap your hands. Don't forget, I have to tell you start before you start your algorithm. And then you will look at the first algorithm, and I give the start command, and everybody does their stomp and their clap. and we're all excited. Then we'll do another one, and somebody will stomp before I say start, and I'll remind them that we all remember the robot or the computer can't start until the event has happened. What is our event? I'm going to say start. Okay, start. And then we'll work our algorithms, get more complicated, and then we're going to lead up to what is a loop. So this is in your skills and procedures. Your students need to know what repetition is. We might as well connect it to a computer coding loop, because that is where that knowledge is going. So now we can talk about, well, what if we want to do something over and over again? And we can, say I put this in here. This means you're going to do this 3 times. And then I'm going to start and we're going to do this 3 times. And then we're going to, do this forever and talk about, well, what happens with a forever loop? When does it stop? Well, it stops when I say stop. And, you're going to have lots of fun as they're stomping and clapping over and over. And then our big finale, we're going to run this loop and tell them to start. And they're all going to start with their rhythm. And with any luck, they'll all get in sync with each other. And you can play a little music to go along with. And they probably won't know the song, but still fun. And this is the point where I would have a conversation with them about how they are my little robots, but they're human, and humans have a smart sentient mind. And your smart sentient minds listened to the other robots around you, and you guys got in sync with each other because it made sense to your brains to get in sync with each other. But if we gave a group of robots that command and they all started at just a little bit different time, they wouldn't be in time with each other the way that you guys did. And that's the real power in the human mind, and why we are the ones that write the languages that tell the robots what to do. And of course, once you've had a little bit of fun playing the song, we're going to want to hit that stop button, which is another event. You have seen some ways I just want to draw your attention back to that you can easily do computer sciences with no tech, checkerboards, floor tiles, anything that makes a grid with some objects that can move around, and you can start having your students build those algorithms. You can also encourage them to do things like Sudoku, coded drawing, or code math equations or instructions for things that you're doing in math. They could write an algorithm for a pattern that they're creating in math. Playing I Spy and other guessing games is working on computational thinking skills, abstracting, decomposing, focusing on specific attributes of something. Coding a friend or a family member or your teacher, giving a set of instructions, whether it be hand signals, oral instructions, something written, and referring to it as a code, including that coding language, if this, then that, adding in a loop and some repetition, and just doing those activities. No tech, you're still doing computer sciences. And as I say, hand signals and actions, you've got lots of opportunities for even doing this in phys ed class. Talking about computer science, we would be remiss to not include technology options, of course. If your students have some Chromebooks that they're able to use, code.org, great place to start. They've got guided lessons for students. They even have pre-reader lessons that they can get on there, start learning how to code with some block-based coding. You don't have to know how to do anything. It'll walk them through step by step, and they can start at the first basic level and work their way up and learn all kinds of things about block coding. Tinker has paid and free resources. Their free resources are definitely really good beginner resources for any students who haven't been doing any kind of block coding on a computer before. The others, Google CS First, Blockly Games, are probably starting to get a little above grade 2, though you may have students who are super keen about this, work through all of their code.org stuff, and they've got, an excitement and a natural ability. Could definitely check out Scratch or some CS First for those guys for sure. our ATA has an amazing selection of maker kits in the library. Get on the ATA website. Make sure you're logged in with the credentials that you use to log into Learn Alberta, and you'll be able to go in and borrow these kits. They have so many that the navigation is divided out alphabetically. Go through, you can surf, book them out. They'll ship them out to your school. You can use them with your class, and then you can just ship them right back. A fabulous way to try out some toys and learning different science learning things, not just for computer science. As you can see, they have other kinds of kits here too. So it's a really great way that you can use some stuff with your class and also test out things that you might want to, purchase to keep in your classroom. So definitely be sure to check those out. I have a few suggestions of my favorite robots. B-bots are for little guys. We use them in our kindergarten, but I see value that students could use them easily up to grade 2 and beyond, especially if they haven't had experience with any type of little robots like this. So you get a pretty good bang for your buck with the B-bots. There's lots of extra mats and learning resources that you can get to go along with them as well. I think my favorite is the Code and Go mouse. I think it's the best bang for your buck. This could easily be used starting in kindergarten and have use up into Division 2 and beyond, with the extra add-on packs and asking students having the ability to create their own mazes and come up with challenges for each other's and whatnot. I find students really like the Code and Go mouse, and again, it's a great value for the price. We also have new to us this year are some Botleys, and I just want to give them a shout out to the students program on the little remote. Same idea. It's all working on the ideas of those, those arrows with the butterfly images earlier too. So if you have an opportunity to have some robots in your class, whether you get some funding and can purchase some, or you borrow some from the ATA library, then you can start to think about maybe having some computer science centers in your class. And whether it's computer science center time and all of your centers are related to that, or it's center time where students are doing other things. Maybe you've got some language and math centers going on, and you could have some robots or a coding center as a part of that too. And then, be further embedding those computer science skills and those coding skills for your students too. So that is all I have about grade 2 computer science. I hope you really enjoyed this video. Be sure to check out the videos in the other science topics about how you can connect your computer science specifically into those as well.